Hello everyone, I'm Tamoor and it is my pleasure to be joined today by Swen from Larian. Swen, how are you doing?
I'm great. How about yourself, Dan?
I'm doing good. It's been an exciting time for fans of Larian. I feel like it's been an exciting time for fans of Larian for about over 2 years now at this point, given the longevity of Baldur's Gate 3. But you just recently put out a major patch, which somewhat unexpected for a lot of people, but significant. It had like new subclasses and crossplay and photo mode, and it feels substantial in a way, which again seems a bit unexpected, but it kind of feels also like a inflection point in the development of that. So where are you and the team currently at with Baldur's Gate 3, both in terms of going forward and setting expectations and also your own commitment to it from a development and people power perspective?
It's the end of 8 years of development, really. So it's been a very long journey. We wanted to go out with a bang in terms of what we were going to add to the game and hand it over to the modders. So the modding toolkit has received a significant update. So people can now start making campaigns. So we're going to see what's going to come from that. I think you'll see quite a few things if I hear the things that they're working on. And then really what you're going to see is us giving support to any major bugs that pop up. Operating systems change, platforms change, so we'll continue to support those things. Never say never, so you never know if we surprise people. It happens from time to time. But from where we are now, it really is focused on the next big things for us so that we can put all of our development attention there.
So last time we talked to you, speaking of next big things, last time we talked about the next project that the team was working on and it being a big kind of evolution of where you're at, but not the one that you've got in your head, which is the one that comes after this. So as an update now, kind of where are you at with what comes next for Larian and also the projects that you're working on? Like what's next for the studio itself?
So I just came out of a meeting where I told people I painfully remember now how much work it is to make a game or a big RPG, that's for sure. So we're deep in the trenches on working on our next big thing. It's shaping up quite well actually, but it's crazy ambitious. There's so much new things that we can do these days. So yeah, it's complex. And on top of that, we're trying to figure out how we're going to be making 2 games. So we talked about that openly, that we're working on 2 games. So organizing ourselves for that also is also not the easiest thing in the universe, because we make very complicated games with lots of permutations, with lots of agency for players. So predicting when those are going to be finished is hard, and then trying to organize 2 games around that is even harder. So keeping ourselves busy, really.
Yeah. It sounds like you need to grow to kind of be able to execute on those things. So do you anticipate like adding new teams? Is the team currently set up to be a 2 project team already, or are you starting to build that as you go along?
Well, we're building that. It's a complex equation because you're at a stage in game development where things are accelerating. Machine learning is an accelerator. It allows you to do things faster. So making an RPG where flow dictates everything it's very, very hard, because you need a lot of people at the end of the waterfall. You need a lot of people at the beginning of the waterfall. Trying to know when the waterfall will get what comes from the top of the waterfall is hard to predict. So you have to scope for that. The ideal case is where you can reuse as many people from one team on the second project. So we try not to grow too much on that front. So we really try to scope for what we need for one game, and then organize ourselves so that when stuff goes down the waterfall, people are ready to work on the next big thing. So the waterfall, obviously, meaning if you in simple terms would say, like, start with design, and then at the end of the day you have QA that is testing everything that was done, and people are fixing bugs. And at that time, you technically speaking would want people in design already to be working on the next thing, but it's not as simple as that. Because you have to deal with a lot of things.
Right. And if I'm thinking correctly, is it the case that the studio is now kind of setting up a dedicated team for storytelling? Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true. stories are our bread and butter. So we need to make sure that stories are ready ahead of time. In the past, we actually made them at the beginning of our production. So it's one of those things that we're doing to ensure that we have our waterfall under control. So we're trying to make the stories of our future games now, so that we have a big backlog of stories available for us when we start on the next thing. So it's one of those things that we're doing to beat the curve. There's many others. And we just opened the positions last week. So we're building a fairly large storytelling team to work together with our writing team. So the writers work on the games. Storytelling teams basically create stories in whatever form for future games. And then obviously they work together with our teams on the current games also. But it's really more of a forward-looking thing than a today thing.
Right. Yeah. I was going to say, like, for people who might not be super aware of what the difference between is something like a storytelling team and a narrative team, how do you kind of explain that? Because someone like me will go, well, aren't they basically the same thing? Like, don't you have? It sounds like your approach is to kind of lay foundations for others to kind of work from.
I used to think the same thing, but then I got educated from reality. Narrative design, dialogue writing, making sure that you have all the permutations covered, arcs over longer periods of time across multiple games. These are all different disciplines, and they require specialization. And so you need people that are used to doing these things. I mean, if you make a great screenwriting background is going to be very useful. If you want to make something that has to last across multiple games, you maybe take people that are used to making trilogies or making TV series or seasons. So there's a wide variety of talent that you need if you want to make sure that your stories are going to be up to scratch. And we are a company that iterates a lot, and that needs a lot of story, because when you play our games and you decide to do something, you want your story to continue. So somebody needs to have thought of this. So it takes us a lot of work to do these things. And to prevent that waterfall that I was talking about from standing still, we learned that it's better to do these things up front rather than at the moment itself, although you still need a lot of capacity at the moment itself to deal with whatever you discovered in the game. It might sound abstract, but in practice it really means we implemented the quest in the game, you're playing it, and then you look at it and you say, hey, I really want to be able to do this. Oh yeah, that's really cool. But what does it mean? Right? What does it mean for the characters? What does it mean for the plot? So these things all need to be thought through, and then they need to be implemented.
It's interesting because most people might not know that you're the founder of Larian, but you're also very much involved in the storytelling aspect of it. You're writing a bunch of it, which is kind of rare for people at an executive level. Where do you kind of fall within that whole team, the existing one and the new one it seems you're trying to build here?
Well, I'm the game director, so it's I work on the core story of how the flow of the entire game is going to be, and then I look at the other end how it's been implemented, and then I give feedback to the team, try this or try that. So I'm a little bit everywhere across that entire pipeline, but I'm only one person, so I have an entire team whom I'm working with. So I've got my writing team, I've got my design team. So they're doing a lot of that work. But what we did realize is, like, we need someone that is a little bit more detached from the day-to-day interactions that we're doing, because you get very, very, very close to what you're writing. And so we need somebody that's a little bit more in the background. So that's where that storytelling team is going to fit.
You mentioned earlier that obviously you need people who are specialists in what they do. And then you also alluded to the fact that you have 2 projects in development at the same time. Firstly, is there anything you can tell us about those projects? But secondly, if I'm right in thinking that Larian's about 500 developers ish, which means you're going to have to figure out new ways to kind of workflow that with a new team as well. And you also mentioned earlier machine learning, which is kind of like a alarm signal in a lot of people's heads. So what are these kind of mechanisms that you're putting in place? Are they on tools that you're kind of moving towards? Are they more people focused, or are you doing what a lot of larger developers are now doing and looking to stuff like AI and machine learning? How much of that should people be aware of, and how are you going to implement that, if at all?
That's a lot of questions all at once.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's start with the latter part. Machine learning means a lot of things, right? So for us, We essentially, there's three things that we use it for. First is automation of tasks that nobody wants to do. It's the obvious things like motion capture cleaning or voice editing or something very Larian specific, retargeting. So that is basically if you play with different species, you want to be able to reuse an animation on a different species, but they're in different size, and then they're doing certain interactions with others. So these are things for which machine learning works really well. Then there's what's called whiteboxing. That's an important one for us because it allows us to iterate more rapidly. Whiteboxing is essentially the stage before you actually redo the real implementation, the thing that's going to ship, where you try something out. So it can be that you say, okay, well, let's try these things out. And typically that takes some time before you can actually play it. And so you can accelerate that with machine learning. So it's good for that. And then the most exciting thing is where you can use it for new gameplay. So truth be told, we're not there yet. I don't think we're close to doing that. But you experiment with it because for an RPG developer, what you really want is something that helps with reactivity to agency. So permutations that you did not foresee, reactions to things that the players has done in the world, they will certainly augment the gameplay experience. So that's where that is. But the reason why people typically have the red alarm, the red bells or the red flags, the red lights going on is because it's going to affect people or it's going to steal their work. At least for us, in those departments which are typically flagged in those areas, we see that the amount of people that we're hiring is going up, not going down. I mean, and I think it's very normal also because, I mean, it's in the end, it's a tool that's available to everybody. So the difference will always be in what you do with it and what people are going to be doing with it, right? So it just changes the baseline from which you start because there are true things that you can do faster. But it's always going to be the people that are going to make the difference in it. And so for us, it's super clear that we're investing heavily into the team and the human touch that's being added to that. And so to bring it back then to your original question, so what it helps us with, because I mentioned automation, that means that there's more time for doing things. It also means that there's more volume of stuff being produced, which means that we can do more complex things. Now, when complexity goes up, things start getting really interesting. So it's fair to say that the games that are being made today are arguably more complex than they were in the past. So dealing with that complexity is a question of, again, automation, trying to stuff out. There are things that we call that narrative validation. It's basically trying to figure out, I did 300 choices here that led to this particular permutation. Did I write something that's not correct anymore? And then we try to automate the discovery of these things, which is very, it's not working super well yet, but it is something that you want to do because it takes a lot of time to go through these things and they're not very creative. So you try to organize your processes, your pipeline to put as much automation as you can to accelerate your iteration. The faster you can iterate, the faster you will get to a certain result. And then the tightening of those pipelines should allow you, in theory, to make your games in a more efficient manner. But I'm deviating, I know, from your original question. But what happens when you do that, it's typically that your complexity goes up because now you say, I can do more. So the net result is exactly the same length of development time that you're going to have. But the way that the roles fluctuate through it is hard to predict. So what we're doing, to now finally really answer your question, is we have teams that are purely focused on the design. And so they're separate from the other teams and they're just literally focusing on that. While the others are working on the main game and they're preparing everything for the second game. But their ability to pre-visualize things in terms of how it's going to flow is slightly faster than it used to be in the past. Also because we obviously have a very big toolkit that we've developed over this entire period of time. And so our hope is that eventually those things will click into one another. But I'll be very transparent. We're looking still on how that's going to work exactly. It is not it's not something that you can just put on an Excel file and say, and now it goes there. You know, it's very, very, very organic. The art of development remains an art. It's not an exact science.
Yeah, I guess the kind of, we talk about those red flags. I think the thing that people will mostly respond to, and no doubt will probably respond to your kind of reaction is the human touch element of it. So that's where people are like, oh, if you're kind of, you know, speeding everything up using automation, what's the line between making sure that, you know, you still have that human touch part of it? Because we've seen art out there now that is generated very quickly, and it's the closer more scrutiny you give it, the more you realize, oh, it's missing things, it's soulless and that kind of stuff. So how do you make sure that line is drawn for people and tell the audience that, hey, we're using automation and AI, that kind of stuff, but the game won't turn into kind of, you know, like generic slop?
Yeah. I don't think you're ever going to see anything that's generated in the game itself, at least now in what we're making now, except for the online bits, if we ever manage to get that to work. So the reactive bits, but that will be clear. I think I always think of it like FIFA. In FIFA, they're reacting to what you're doing when you're shooting on the goal, and they say, oh, that striker scores. It's the procedural generation that is going on real time. So that's what I meant with the gameplay bits. So there's no new ways of doing that. In terms of the content that's being created, that's still being made by hand. So that's these are very long and complex pipelines before something gets into your hands, right? So the things where it's being used the most is in terms of predicting flow, and flow is a iterative approach. So I'll give you a practical example. So we discovered already in the past that if we write out a situation and we are going to talk about it, we're going to get very excited, right? And then we're going to try to put in the whiteboxing, we're going to script it, and we're going to try to play it, right? And so if the environment around of the situation is empty, right? What you notice is that the scripting will never have any good feeling to it for some strange reason. Regardless of how much times we talk to the scripters or we try to explain to them, there's a thing, you don't see it, you don't react to it, right? Now, if you completely decorate the entire level and you do the same exercise, you say, here's a situation, and you give it to the scripter, you're going to see that it's completely different, right? So it's going to feel more real, and you get a better feel for, is the situation going to work, yes or no? Now, it takes a lot of time to do that. And it's not necessarily something that's going to ship because it's just a trial at that point in time. If you can accelerate that phase, the iteration time that went into thinking about the flow has been decreased, and so you're going to get more iteration because more things will be tried out, and so you're going to get a better result as at the end of it. At all times in this process, it was the person, the developer that was guiding this process, that was using their creativity. This was not a generator. The only thing that was generated is just the environment at that particular point in time, but that's not something you're going to ship. Right. So the same thing goes for pretty much everything that you would generate. So you tried to pre-visualize things because it makes it easier, right? And but then afterwards you say, okay, well, I think we're going to go in that direction. Let's now see how that goes to what we call orange box. And in orange box, you make the things by hand. So that's a very different thing still.
Right. So your kind of like approach is nothing that is created using machine learning AI will be turned into content as is. Like, well, that's just the early phase of it. A person will come in and take everything that you've done there and manually create that by hand.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I have to be careful because so if we, for instance, there is output of machine learning will happen in things like retargeting or in cleaning of motion capture. There you will actually see that gets into the game, but that's not the thing that people are worried about, I think. It is more about, are we going to see, is that the art that's here, is it generated? In everything that we're doing right now, no. You're not going to see the generated art in the output game that's going to happen. Do we use it during the dev process to pre-visualize things? Yes. We will try things out or to try. But really, even then, I mean, like, don't expect this to be, I think, we're not creating these beautiful, great things. This is just really like, get me, I need a chair and a thing in here so I can just have a look at if it's going to work, right? So don't oversell it either for what it is. It is a tool to help you accelerate your development process.
Right. So there's not going to be any characters with like 5 hands unless it's intended to be there.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
No, certainly not. I mean,
do you ever foresee a time where that kind of like jump could happen, where you feel confident enough in AI to allow it to create content, or is that something that you fundamentally believe as a principle of, the studio and your own creative process, you'll never make that jump?
So I don't think you would have a competitive advantage if you do, because it's going to be what's available to everybody, right? So that's what I meant with the baseline. If the baseline goes up because generation is available to everybody, fine, that's a new reality that we're in. But you're still going to want to create something special on top of that, right? So, and I think that's where teams like us will make the difference. We're a very boutique team. We're actually crafting the situations and the flow of the story by hand is the thing that we do. It's what when we talk to people about it, this is always the discussion, right? So, oh my God, our jobs are going to disappear. I said, no, but you're just going to work differently, potentially, but you're still going to be making the difference. I don't think that people in my position that say like, oh, we'll replace everybody by AI are doing the right thing. I think they're doing the wrong thing. What I do think is that we're going to jump forward in the type of games that we make. So we're going to make better games that improve in simulating reality and suspending our disbelief. So we're going to be making our games differently. That's, I think, goes without any doubt. But to say that it will replace the craftsmanship, I think we're very far from it. For that to happen, you would need real intelligence, I think, and real creativity. And even then, I'm not sure if you're going to get actually human emotion in there also. So you'll need all those things you'll need a human, to be honest. So now it's the Android's dream of electric sheep, right? So, but as long as the human difference is there, we will be able to make a difference. But we'll be able to do more. And that's what you see today already. I mean, again, because people often say, "Oh yeah, the automation," but the automation is a huge thing. I don't know if people understand how much time an animator spends on stuff they don't want to work on, and that now that's being taken away because you can automate it. It's a huge thing, so it adds a lot to the time that they have to work on the creative stuff.
Yeah, as you mentioned, do you anticipate saving that time, using that time to shorten development cycles, or do you think it will be the same kind of period of time, just more focused where you want it to be instead of where it needs to be at times?
So I think the naive thing is to think that it will shorten them. I think that I think this is an age-old truth. If you give a developer 2 years, they'll take 3. So the same thing will be the case here with what you're going to give them in terms of abilities to do stuff. If they have the ability to do things faster, they'll just do more, which is what you want actually also. That's why I think it will improve the state of the art in terms of games that we're going to see. You're going to see more and more things, but they will be used in creative ways that we haven't even imagined yet.
So you mentioned the storytelling department is the new thing that you're kind of working on and setting up, and you've got your roles out there, which people can find and apply to if they feel they have a shot or are qualified or want to take a crack at it. One of the things that's been kind of in my mind is the sensibility and the identity of the studio, which I think more and more to people is something they pay attention to. And I think what makes Larian kind of unique, or in the minds of fans and people generally, what makes Larian stand out is you're a pretty big team, but you also have that very independent sensibility at the core. So that's something now that I and a lot of people are probably thinking about. How do you maintain that same kind of indie energy while both expanding the amount of people that you have and also adding these tools that are kind of more advanced?
Yeah, it's a challenge. So I mean, the baseline attitude to that is to it's going to sound super corporate, to empower the developer. But the idea is really that we try to give every single developer as much freedom as they can get without walking outside of the general lane in which we're heading. Or to place it, there's a certain direction. Here's something that we need. Go and do your thing and add whatever you can with X amount of time. So the way that we organize that, I talked about at last GDC, I think, is the feature group, where we just say, this is your feature. You own this together with the team that's assigned to it. Do the best that you can with it. We'll look at it from time to time. If it's too much out of control, we'll tell you, but otherwise, this is your thing. And so that works super well. So it's one of our secret tricks. It's not that secret, but it works. So I think at GDC we gave the example of the BART class on BG3 was one of the most successful ones, where we just said to the developers, here's the BART class, these are the things that need to happen with it, go and have fun with it. And then what we got out of it was so much more than what we expected. And that works really well when you leave people and you give them the room and the trust to do their thing. And so that attitude, I think, is important to protect. So we do our best to make sure that stays there. But obviously, as the team is bigger, it requires more organization to allow that to happen. So it's something we're focused on heavily. Funnily enough, also through automation. So where you try, it's a stupid thing, right? But it's like a core story has changed. Here's an AI tool that tells you what has changed, rather than having to reread the entire document again. It's a small thing, but it saves so much time in a day. And so these people need to be aware of these things. All right, great. So they're aware of it. So it's that kind of thing. But essentially, at the core, it keeps on trusting people to do what they're very good at. So that's it, and giving them the space and the means to do so. So, and then I think the other bit is trying to be as open as we can. I mean, if we have communications problems, it's probably because somebody forgot. It's never going to be because it was hidden. So it's also a very important bit.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing as a leader of the studio, you probably have thought about or think about or in the process of figuring out is obviously as you grow, the stakes for the thing that you're making become a bit higher because you now have more people to kind of think about. How do you kind of approach expansion knowing that the risks then you then have to take become trickier because the scope of it is bigger, or more people, and the stakes of it are much higher and you can affect more people? How do you approach that?
There's I think I talked about this, maybe with you. I don't remember if it was with you, right? So it's always having fallback plans. So we've got a plan B and a plan C. So that stays the same. So that hasn't changed since my days when I didn't have money to pay for the gasoline. There's a plan B and there's a plan C in case things go wrong. And that is essentially something I hope I never have to do. But I think they're fairly robust. Obviously, the proof will be in the eating of the pudding. I don't know what the future will bring. But I feel fairly confident that what we're doing is solid.
Right.
So I'll be able to look in the mirror should it go wrong in the way that things will then roll out, I think.
Yeah. I guess you mentioned what your plan is. And I think it's worth asking because a lot of people look to you as kind of a person who's able to cut through the noise, and also your successes are kind of evident and it gives you an authority. Like, what do you think are traditionally the mistakes that get made when implementing something like automation or even growing a studio that you see happening around you, which kind of contribute to the conversation that this is not doable or it's something to be worried about?
But so there's two components, right? So the growing bit, we're figuring it out ourselves because we're only just in the growth phase, and so others have gone through it. So we're definitely aware of the risks. On the automation front, I think it's that. I mean, I've heard people in my position talk about, I'm going to be able to replace this and this and this and this and this, and I think that's the wrong attitude to it. It's like because I think for automation, the focus of automation has to be how do I make so that people can do more of what they really matters and less of the stuff that they don't want to do but they have to do because otherwise it doesn't work. I think that's the most important bit. So your focus should be there, and then that's not necessarily a cost reduction, but it is going to be an increase of ability, which is a good thing when you're making games. I think so. That's the important one there. And in terms of scaling, I really don't know. I mean, we try what we're doing. So we try to keep it sustainable, but every single day you learn. So you have to adapt and then try to be, I think our core values are solid, all right? So our values are very simply put, it's player and team first, and that's it. So it's not profit first, which is a very different KPI than a lot of companies. And that makes it very different. And so the belief is that if the content is there, the profit will follow. Or even simpler terms, happy player, happy business. I heard that the other day from somebody who was applying for a job here. So I said, that's really good, actually. Yeah, because it literally is the core of what the games industry should be about: happy player, happy business.
Yeah.
So we focus on that, and we make many mistakes for sure. But if you then also try to learn from those mistakes and try not to repeat them at least more than once, then you're already in a better place also.
Right. You talked about your core values and the kind of games that you make, and for many people, especially you're known as the almost single player storytellers, and you have online elements, but primarily you make single player games to a degree and have that co-op and you have narrative around them. And there was recently a discussion around kind of the future and the viability of games like that, and you're on Twitter popping off talking about, I believe the quote is, "It's the time of the year when big single player games are declared dead. Use your imagination, they're not, they just have to be good." And there's been a lot of discussion that there is no place for big single player games, which in turn is kind of perpetuating the idea that you shouldn't fund these single player games. And you've said that's something that frustrates you. So kind of, can you talk a bit about that and where you're at that, especially in the context of what you're doing now?
Well, I'm not going to name names, but this came up from some very high-profile people. So it really frustrated the hell out of me. Because it is what it does is it certainly cuts off a whole bunch of avenues because that from that side you will not get the funding into the single-player narratives, and so that missed. I mean, you just got Claire Obscure, right? So that just came out. It doesn't make any sense at all, because this is typically coming from directions where it's all focused on microtransactions, milk it all you can type of business models. And true, there's lots of revenue being generated there, more revenue than you're going to get from your single player games. But that doesn't mean that single player games are not a viable market. There's lots of people that want to play a really good single player game and put money in it, especially if they have cooperative multiplayer like ours. Saying that they have no future just because there's another business model that earns more money, it just doesn't make any sense. I mean, like, it's like with music, with books, there's room for a lot of things, right? Each their budget. I think we've proven with BG3 that you can put in a pretty high budget and expect pretty high results. So there's market there. And there's other examples. I mean, there's Dark Souls for Elden Ring that proves it too, right? So it's short-sighted, I think. But it's true that if you are going to just clone the games that are successful and bring those to the market, and not innovate at all, then you can expect that they're not going to sell. It's obvious, but that goes for any genre, I think, right? So there's a tolerance to the patience of the player for repeats of the same formula, which is the same for everything. It's for movies, for series, whatever. I mean, I think the example I often use when discussing this with the team is like the My Little Pony craze from the 2009s, when there was market research has shown that there's still a market for My Little Pony simulators in which you go to a hotel in Bavaria and you go, let's make that game. And say, guys, so that's not the right reason for making a game. So this is so that was really that. So what I wanted to say is I think that for sure there's lots of money to be made in certain avenues, but you certainly shouldn't rule out a single player game as something that can be self-sustaining.
Right. I guess obviously everyone's going to be like, yeah, of course, that makes perfect sense. But the realities of the industry currently are people are aware of that and they get behind that. But the kind of folks that are making the decisions aren't the people that message is reaching. So what would you say, how can developers empower themselves to kind of not abandon the idea of making single player games or narrative focused games that aren't just, kind of iterative on other games? How do they tackle that kind of conundrum?
It's not easy, because you need funding to be able to create your game, unless you're really solo funded, and even then you still need funding. So if you need external funding, you're going to have to convince someone, and this is going to be the hard part. So that's why that narrative is dangerous. If people start saying that narrative propagates even to non-games industry people that are ready to put money into the games industry. We are an example of a company that at some point had external funding from non-games industry people. If somebody would have kept on repeating that single player games don't make money, they wouldn't have invested in our single player game, and that would have been game over. I think the best way that I've seen is to make something that gets player enthusiastic, or people that play games enthusiastic. That's really fun, right? That doesn't start, because I've seen many PowerPoints like this that start, this game is going to be like Doom meets Commander Keen, whatever. And so that's fine. And then the next slide is, Doom audience is this, Commander Keen audience is this. Let's add up these audiences. This is going to be great. And said, okay, well, you lost it now. So because the second slide should have been, if it would be a PowerPoint slide, let's go to the demo. And let's play some game. And then whatever little vertical slides that you have, that's really fun. Usually, if it's different and it's good, it's sufficient to convince somebody that knows what they're talking about. And there's many people in the investment community or in the publishing community still, and even in development community, developers that have been successful, they say, hey, shit, this is actually kind of cool, deserves to be made. I'll give you some money to make it, or invest in it. So I think that's, it should always be the core. What am I making here? Does this game deserve to be made, right? Is there a reason for it to be? If the answer is no, then it's normal that nobody's going to invest in it. I think that's fine. But if the answer is yes, then typically you have a better chance of finding someone that's going to be able to fund it. And these days you do have the audience, right? You have early access, you have Kickstarter still to a certain extent. So it is possible to get people on board, but I'm not going to say that it's easy, right? But it's got to be different. It's got to offer something new. Otherwise it's going to have a hard time.
I guess then the follow-up to that is, and I'm kind of like just trying to put everything in perspective, and I might have a flawed understanding of it. I feel like that kind of approach, it makes a lot of sense, and I'm sure it can inspire people who operate at a certain level. Like, you know, you have these almost indie teams or AA teams, whatever you want to call them, like the team behind Sandfold, the team behind Clear Obscure. Like, they could see something like what you just said and be like, yeah, I'm going to approach this. However, a lot of people would also argue, but you need to get through to the bigger companies, almost the corporations like the Sonys and the EAs and that kind of stuff. Do you think it's realistic in this stage and in this stage of the economy and where games are at, for them to see that message and be like, yes, that's actually viable? I know there was a time when they would do that, but do you think we can go back to that? And or do you think that we're beyond that, where they need to operate at such a level where they don't have the ability to kind of turn the ship, as it were, to that direction?
I think, so not to quote the examples that you just said, but just as a general message, I think they would be wise too. I mean, that's how they're going to get innovation. It's not going to come from having to play it safe. It's going to have to come from risk. So here's the thing, right? So 101 evolutionary theory with Sven. You only get evolution if there's mutation. If there's no change, there is no evolution, right? You end up in what's called a local minimum, or basically a dead end. So you need to innovate to be able to make progress. Otherwise, you die as a company. Here's another one, management. I'm sorry. So this is a topic I think about a lot. So you have this S shape, they call it, in growth curves of companies, something that we have to deal with, right? So basically it means you're working. Oh, you got your breakthrough, so you go up, and then I'm on camera anymore. So you're working. Up, you have your breakthrough. Different directions, sorry. But anyway, so you have diminishing revenue or diminishing returns at some point from the thing that makes you break through. So if you keep on doing the same thing, those diminishing returns will come faster and faster and faster, and eventually you're going to die out. So you need to make sure that there's new stuff coming in, right? So what's the easiest way of doing that is investing in young, enthusiastic development teams, right? So that are trying stuff out, and then figuring out which of these things is going to be working out, and maybe then saying, okay, well, this is ready for a bigger league, so we can invest more, because obviously the investments are large and there's lots of risk involved, etc. But not doing that, I think that would be a death sentence eventually. I mean, you have to. It's all easier said than done, by the way. But it is, I think, imperative that you continue to invest in new things if you want to sustain yourself as a larger company, because at some point, whatever made you large is going to lose its value, and you're going to have something new. And if it's not at the pipeline, then it's typically too late already. It should have been already coming up. That's the where you, in the middle of your S curve, you should have already had stuff ready for your next S-curve, because then you can chain your S-curves after one another. One thing starts dying out, that's fine, there's a new thing coming up. And so you've seen many companies that have been successful in reinventing themselves. But then it's true that you've seen in recent times there's this hyper consolidation that's been happening around certain genres, certainly in the free-to-play space, where there's innovation becomes harder. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, again, just trying to get your perspective, because you clearly have thought way more about this from I don't know business as well of games that much, but like, is it viable? Because what I see now also is a lot of the bigger companies, big successes can come from looking at what a smaller team is doing, where the innovation is happening, and then executing that on a much bigger scale. Because of the size of the company, they have the ability to reach a much wider audience than that smaller developer can come and almost push them out. Like, I don't think of, the size doesn't make sense, but I think of like PUBG and that kind of like,
same thing.
Yeah, and then Fortnite coming along as a kind of like epic, looking at that potentially and going, you know, they're executing that same kind of idea on a bigger level. I would say Fortnite iterates and has its own innovations, but that basic concept of looking at the little guy going, I can do that bigger and get it to more people quicker. What about that approach to kind of existing in the kind of world of video games development, business, and that kind of stuff?
Well, it sometimes works, but not always, because this is going to become a conversation about management and investment. There was once a guy, I forgot who was the study, and they looked at a whole bunch of companies that were successful, and then they looked at a whole bunch of companies that weren't successful. And so one of the key things that made companies successful was to be first to market, and they operated in the blue ocean. And then the competition came, and they started making the ocean redder and redder because they started killing each other, and the bloods colored the water. But the ones that were the first, in general, survived in the red ocean, and because they managed to figure out the best island, the best place to be. So in case of PUBG versus Fortnite, I mean, PUBG did quite well for itself, right? They were first to market. Many people came after and had a harder time trying to do the same thing. Fortnite, obviously and famously, did it at a larger scale with much higher production values, and then with an enormous machine behind it. So did well, but there's lots of examples where you see people trying to do the same thing and it doesn't work that well, right? So there's, think of the action RPG. Like literally the original action RPG when talking about Diablo clones, right?
Yeah.
So there were a shitload of Diablo clones, but there were not many Diablo clones that succeeded in there, right? Yeah. Yet the formula was simple, that's what they started out with. And same for the RTS, by the way, also actually, right? So how many RTSs do we have? Yeah. But we're still talking about Warcraft and Command and Conquer, and then it starts getting harder if you have to start thinking about what's the next one, right? So I wouldn't say that's. I think you're better off having PUBG inside your company or working with them on something.
Yeah, I guess it all comes down to like, what is the priority for your company? Is it to make money fast? Is it to make a lot of money? Or is it to build something unique and sustainable potentially, right?
Well, I like to think that if you're a game developer, you want to make games. So I think that should be your first priority. I mean, like if you want to make money, there's the financial market, so you can also lose money. But I mean, like I think the games industry, like movie industry, people get into the movie industry because they want to make movies, right? Not because they want to make money. The same thing goes for games. But games make a lot of money, and that attracts a lot of people. And so as a result of that, you get a lot of people that are suddenly there for making money and forget what it is that is making games. That was my talk at the speech at the Game Awards was literally about that. Seeing that spreadsheet first and the game second is never a good idea in this industry. Put the game first, and your spreadsheet will follow if you put the game first. You don't have to worry about that. But for some reason, that truth doesn't permeate, which is really frustrating. Because that, as a result of that, you see so many waste of bandwidth happening in the industry. That's like where you say, okay, you know what I mean. You look at all these things coming out and you say, oh shit, that was a money-making thing. That was a money-making thing. That was a money-making thing. And then you can almost say like, what are the probabilities it's going to succeed? You almost know already up front it's not going to work because I'm not excited as a player about it.
Yeah, I think one of the just maybe this is a question, maybe it's something you could just respond to. Like one of the things that I really appreciate that you do is when you're on Twitter, you kind of highlight games that are coming out that are worth kind of checking out, even if they're like you talk about like Expedition 33, you've talked about Skald before. I know you were on the Balatro train pretty early. How important is that for you as a personal kind of like crusade almost, and why do you do that, and do you think other developers in prominent positions should be doing the same thing?
I think a lot of developers do. I mean, and I think you do it because somebody did it for you maybe, and you appreciate it tremendously. I mean, a shout out from developers that are more established is worth gold to a younger developer or somebody that's up and coming. So it's a sign of support, really. I mean, like it's also to our prior point, right? So there's quite a community of developers because we all know how much shit we have to go through to make our games, right? So we empathize with each other and we understand when we see something, especially when we see something good, we know, man, how did you get here? There must have been a story there to get there to that point. And that's, I think, showing that is important. And then, if I get excited about the game, I definitely want to tell people about it because it's like just, okay, this is my thing. I'm very keen on it.
Yeah, it kind of is in line with your core principles that you talked about as a developer. And one of the other things that also is I'd love to get your kind of insight on the kind of ownership and collaboration with the community, because recently obviously you were very open about the situation around the Stardew mod, which was a pretty big deal, you know, and you came out and you said that free quality fan mods highlighting your characters in other game genres are proof your work resonates and is a unique form of word of mouth. Obviously a lot of companies won't take that same approach, but you also said there are good ways of dealing with this, where there is kind of like this two parties fighting over the same kind of like ownership over something. What do you think are those good ways of dealing with it? And why do you think it's important, if you don't know them, to try and figure them out?
So IP law is really tricky.
Yeah.
It's one of those laws that it's a hard time dealing with it because it's at the core, it's an exclusion law. It's a deviation from a general principle. There should be a free market. And so that's why you have all these stupid things around it. So that does need to be set up because it leads companies to do strange things as a result of it. But as a company that owns IP, it's perfectly possible to give somebody a license. So you could just say, hey, I think what you're doing is really cool. Here's a license. And that solves it. And I think that's what was done in this case. I think there was so that's the easiest way of dealing with it. If you're a company, especially in games or in any entertainment, and you have a group of people that spends, I don't know how much time on creating something in honor of your game, especially in another game, I think you should applaud that. It's really cool, right? So, I mean, like it's passion, it is word of mouth from a marketing point of view, and it is, if it's good, it's a contribution to the entire games ecosystem. So, I think those are good things to happen, right? So it's different when it gets exploited commercially, because then suddenly there's a really good argument to be made. Hold on, we do need to have a conversation here. But when it's free, when it's fan-based, and when it's clearly fan-based, I think it's different, right? So there's, there's lots of games that have truckloads of things made around it that people share with each other, right? And then so I don't think you need to crack down on that. I think that's the wrong message.
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things, kind of bring this to a close, is about BG3 is it's been a huge success from various perspectives, but I think what's, for me as someone who like looks at the industry and culture around it, is what's really been crucial is it has had a huge impact on culture around video games, and it has made a mark which isn't likely to go away for a really long time, which, if you are inclined to put it in like capitalism thinking, means that there's a lot more people kind of dedicated to that game, that IP, that world long term, which again, if you want to make money, you've got longer term revenue generating opportunities. But at the same time, this audience has kind of taken on a life of its own, and it has ramifications beyond just the release of the game. And like you said now, like you've given BG3 to the community. Do you think that's something that people really underestimate the power of, impacting the culture as opposed to just thinking about the bottom line?
Well, it comes down from the same thing, right? Happy player, happy business.
Yeah.
So it's literally, I mean, like, we cannot sustain at the level that the modding community is making mods for BG3 the content pipe. We cannot do it with just, oh, well, we could if we were to use AI for it, but you don't want that. So if you want a game to live, that's the best way of doing it. It's the same like development. If I want our games to be great, I have to make sure that the developers own it. If I'm going to be the one owning it, it's never going to be great because I can't do everything. I need the developers to do it. Same thing goes with the players. If the players own the game, they'll make it fantastic. So we had many examples in the past. So it's a miracle actually that not more people have figured this out by now. So I mean, Skyrim comes to mind as a game where modding made it huge, right? So, but that's gone. I mean, like. I don't have to tell you what Warcraft 3 did in terms of mods, what that led to. Yeah. So many cool things happen when you give people ownership over them, and as a company, you can perfectly profit from it. I mean, like your core game is going to keep on selling, and whatever. If we're not in a DLC business, but if we would have been in a DLC business, I'm sure we would have benefited from it also. It's not as if that. Those opportunities go away. You just have a stronger, broader community that's more engaged. And so I cannot understand why you would not want that. And I think more and more people are starting to figure that out. And players are getting more vocal also about it. So it's a good thing. Right? So that's the days of, I was seeing this tweet the other day because we had the Oblivion remaster and somebody said, oh my God, I bought the horse armor.
Yeah, that is a hell of a turnaround as well.
So I thought that was funny.
Yeah, that's very, very funny, actually. You mentioned something there that I would love to kind of expand on a bit, and maybe even get your thinking behind, just even if it's like not been said for a while. You said you're not in the DLC business, which is, conventional wisdom would say you need to be in the DLC business to make the most out of the thing that you're making. Why are you not in the DLC business? Is that a hard and fast rule, or is it somewhat malleable given the context you're in? And what's the justification for right now not being in the DLC business?
It's boring. So it's really to really the honest answer is like we try to be in the DLC business. This is I've talked about that. So with BG3 but just it's no passion. And I mean like. Happy player, happy business, but you also need to have happy developers for a happy player. What we're doing now makes developers way more happy. We erred because it was what we were supposed to do, right? So, we got a huge game, huge hit, like, we got to make DLC this and DLC that and DLC there and DLC there, and the money's going to pile up all the time. And we just nodded and said, yeah, we'll make DLCs, and then the moment that we had some time to think, we realized, what are you doing? So sometimes progressive insight is not a bad thing. So sometimes you go down the wrong path and then you say, oh, fuck it, just change course, pardon my French, and just do something else.
Right, to bring us to a close, final question, just kind of broadly speaking, like you've kind of outlined where Larian is going for the future. What is kind of your mission statement from this point on for the studio, and where do you hope to be in 5-10 years from now?
So we got an ambitious project. I'm not going to just tell you yet what, but I hope that definitely 5 years from now, I can tell you about it. And saying, yeah, this is working out. This is what we're doing, and we are. In a position where we can craft multiple RPGs side by side, so that we don't have to worry about people going idle, because that's actually the main reason why we're doing multiple projects, right? We have this waterfall, where you have a smaller group that starts thinking about what we're going to make, and then this very large group that executes on it and talks to the people that were thinking about it. But then when that very large group is finished, if the people at the beginning are not ready, then everybody's fucked because everybody has to wait. Right? That's what we're trying to avoid. So I hope that I can tell you 5 years from now, hey, we cracked it, we figured it out. This is what we're doing now. Here's game one. We're making this completely different thing. That's an important bit. This completely different thing. Game two, and then when game two is going to be ready, we already got another thing that's going to come, and it's going to. And if we can make that work in a really good way, that we enjoy our lives, that's going to be mission accomplished. In practice, it will probably be miserable, and there's going to be plenty of stuff that went wrong. But that's the goal. That's what we're trying to work towards. So something that we can get really multiple things that we can really get excited about. But I don't think that's the problem. But then actually being able and executing on them also without killing ourselves. I think that's the important bit.
Amazing. Well, Swen, I hope it's not 5 years before we get to talk again, but I do appreciate your time.
My wife will divorce me if it takes 5 years.
Thank you so much for joining me and spending a bit of time kind of speaking about the future and current state of the industry. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you very much, Sam.